Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Anna Bright. I am the #2 pickleball pro in the world, if you didn't know who I am. And today I'm coming at you guys to talk to you about all things pickleball in Asia, in Hanoi, Vietnam specifically. I know you guys already watched my vlog. I'm the best vlogger in pickleball. Thank you. But I wanted to get a little bit more in depth about kind of the ins and outs of my experience of playing in Hanoi, because this was my first tournament in Vietnam and only my second ever international tournament. And I feel like I had a very different experience for my first go around. So if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. I do weekly vlogs. I also am trying to do these kind of more informational videos with you guys and share more of my nitty gritty insights because I have a lot. So please subscribe if you're new. So the first big thing I wanted to talk about as it relates to my pickleball experience in Vietnam is actually about the people. The people of Vietnam were so incredible. I feel like the last time I was there, I didn't really get to experience too much or really talk to people. It was kind of like the deepest interactions I had were me like saying hi, signing something, and like smiling for a photo, and that was kind of it. I also think that the Vietnamese people are very intense, and I don't really think I understood that very well the last time I was here, which was just for a couple of exhibitions. But now I have so much of a better like understanding for the culture and the people, and everyone is so nice and earnest, and they really care about what they care about. And that's pickleball. Pickleball is one of those things. You guys have heard me say, you've heard other people say like, oh, you can't understand like what pickleball is like in Asia until you've been there. And that's really true. But I also don't think you can really understand like travel until you've been there. So I just wanted to kind of say something about that. Everyone was so nice. People freely give out compliments. My Vietnamese name is Anh Zi, which means sunshine. I hope I'm saying that right, but I am absolutely so obsessed, and I could hear them saying it like on the loudspeakers and everything, and I would always go, woo! So I absolutely loved it. Hopefully I said that right. The spelling looks strange to English speakers because the letters don't correspond to the same sounds as they do in English, but that's the first thing I wanted to say is just shout out everyone I met in Vietnam. Everyone was incredible. Like the line to get my signature after the tournament was insane. But okay, this isn't just a travel channel. You guys saw a lot of my off-court adventures in the vlog, but I had so much fun. I wish I got to see and do more, but it was great. But let's get into the actual pickleball. The playing conditions in Vietnam were really interesting and really new and unique to myself and other Americans. And I had played in Malaysia and everything, and it was very hot and humid in Malaysia, but I think this venue being indoors and being not on an actual court changed things further. So we were playing inside. The facility did have air conditioning. I saw some people speculating there was no AC. There was AC, but probably not to the standards of coolness that Americans are used to. And there's also just thousands of people in the stadium. Like the body heat was out of control, and there was minimal airflow, and there were a lot of like lights blasting on center court. So it was really hot for us. It was really hot for those of us who were not used to the conditions. I was pounding electrolytes. I was regularly drinking like 4 sticks of Slam It Hydrate a day. You can use my code Anna20 if you want to try it out. It's the best. It definitely got me through the tournament. I was feeling crampy. I was also pounding coconut water. Like all of us were really trying to stay hydrated. I had no respiratory issues. I know some people were having trouble breathing. I was just having perspiratory issues. If you guys watched the vlog, you saw me. I could literally wring out my shirt. Conditions that hot will affect any ball. They will affect play significantly, but we weren't also not using the ball that we're used to using in America, which is the Lifetime ball. That's actually one of the hardest pickleballs that there is. But the ball we were using in Asia was the Yola ball, which I think is very popular internationally. And this thing was playing like pretty mushy. This thing was very mushy. And I do not think is the optimal ball for these hot and muggy conditions. I think in a colder climate, I would love to try this ball out in a colder area or when there's a little bit more just temperature control. But this thing was playing so soft, and it was getting soft fast, and it was getting really heavy just because of how humid it was. That really impacted play significantly. And then the last thing that really impacted play was just that we were playing, it wasn't pickle roll. It was kind of like they put out squares on the court, but so we did also have a lower bounce. I'd say there were these 3 big factors that contributed to the playing conditions you guys saw in Vietnam. 1, it being so hot and humid. 2, the ball being different and being heavily impacted by the conditions more than I think like a different ball would. And then 3rd is the lower bounce due to the court. I thought this court was really good for a non-permanent court surface. Like it wasn't like there were a bunch of bad bounces or anything. The lines were skitty, but it still is a little bit of a lower bounce. But I would say those are the main 3 factors that kind of contributed to the things that you'll see this weekend. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is how did these things impact play? which, and you're probably like, well, it looked like you couldn't hit that hard, and you would be correct. The main way that these conditions impacted play is that it was a lot tougher to generate power. It just felt like you'd hit as hard as you could and you couldn't put the ball anywhere. I saw Jason Aspis, who was there and who was the president of the UPAA, say it looked a lot like 2022 pickleball, a lot of extended firefights, and I felt like you could really see that in the women's matches. Like, obviously women's is usually characterized more so by extended firefights than any other event, but like in the women's final, it was just like me, Annalie, Catherine, and Tyra just freaking slugging it back and forth, and it was like no one could kind of finish a point, is what it largely felt like, which is a big deal, especially like when you're playing Tyra. Tyra is one of the best at finishing points, and not many men are even that much better than her at it. I think her overhead, her drop volley, everything's so good. And even Tyra is struggling to finish points. So it was tougher to finish points. It was tougher to generate pace. And another big thing, at least something that I felt like, I think I was a little bit in my head, maybe more than some other players, I don't think I adjusted the best, was I felt like it was tougher to drop with this ball. And I think resets too. Resets were a big thing. I felt like I just felt a little bit kind of confused and didn't really know. I felt like my subconscious like machinery of when to reset versus when to counter just was not really calibrated for the playing conditions in Vietnam, because in the US, like there are a lot of balls that I would reset because I can make that reset 98% of the time. But if I counter, I'm going to be behind in a rally and I'm going to lose that point like 60% of the time. So I'm going to hit a reset. But in Vietnam with this ball and it would get like a little bit more wobbly and it was so heavy and I felt like the response wasn't as consistent is what we're used to. It's like the reset was more difficult. And then it was also like, why not just counter? So it was better to just counter because no one can get enough power, so no one can get enough like power to finish a point anyway. So why not just counter? So in women's, that was an adjustment that I made personally, was I started to just swing through transition more than I pretty much ever do. Oh my gosh, they're cleaning the windows. Can you see? They're cleaning my windows. That's crazy. Okay. That's so random. I wish they would wave. Hi. They didn't want to wave. That's actually so funny. Okay, now I have to get my camera set up again. But I'm also, just so you guys, sorry, I completely lost my train of thought. But I'm staying right now in the second tallest building in the world, and later today we're going to like break a world record or something. So there's a lot of activity going on. Okay, so it felt like my calculus was a little bit off. In women's, I do think I started to figure it out. Obviously, Brooke and Zoe pushed us really hard, and after that match, I was really trying to like think and figure out what I needed to do better. But in mixed, I don't think I figured it out. I didn't really adjust. I didn't play well in mixed. I felt out of sorts. I was in my head, and that was reflected in the results. Everyone who beat us, adjusted better than me, better than Hayden and I, and kudos to them. That's kind of all there is to it, and I'll be thinking about how to do it better next time in a mixed context, because you can't just stay in a firefight with a man like you can a woman, at least not for me. So I think those were some big things and that were impacted, and how play was really impacted by this ball. Another big one is I think that skill actually mattered less. In Vietnam, I think skill mattered a little bit less because it felt like you were just going to end up in a firefight anyways. And I think that hand speed actually mattered less in Vietnam, how fast your hands were, because people had more time to react because the ball was moving slower. So it was like hand speed was less important and skill was a little bit less important. And what mattered more was like power. Just could you slug your way through a firefight? Could you win a slugfest? So I think that's one reason why maybe in mixed, H and I were actually a little bit negatively impacted, and why like it benefited Christian, because Hayden's game is really built around like skill and variety and being good off the bounce. It's also a lower bounce here, and that mattered a little bit less. And like a guy like Christian just simply hits harder, and I think that favored him a little bit more in that context. So I think it's really interesting. I think there's so much, and it just kind of opened my eyes to how much like the ball and conditions really matter. And as pickleball continues to grow internationally, it'll be really interesting like how regional differences kind of come about. Just you can see that in a lot of the international players, their games are a little bit more built around getting the ball down rather than kind of hitting more linear. Especially you can see it in the women's games. There's a bit more of a tendency to pancake because this gets the ball down well, and in these really hot and muggy conditions, that's more important than being able to just go through the court, which is what a lot of us do a little bit more in the US. I do think you're seeing a shift towards like sitting forehand and pancake tendencies in general, but it's more pronounced in Asia, which is really cool. So that's some of my nerdy thoughts on the play differences. It was a really fun challenge, and obviously Annalie and I, thankfully, we can win a slugfest, but Brooke and Zoe pushed us really hard. I think it was also a really good ball for Zoe and Brooke because Brooke can hit really hard. I thought she was hitting the hardest out of anyone on the court in that match, and I think Zoe, she plays a lot like Ben Johns, a lot of like not really, how high variance dinks, and she like reaches in really well. And so it's good conditions for people who do that. So those are some of my thoughts on the playing conditions and how play was impacted by those playing conditions. The next thing I want to talk about is some of the big cheating scandals and the things with the refs that I saw getting so much coverage on social media. And I think this is a really interesting and nuanced topic. I hope no one kind of comes after me for my take and my thoughts, but the match that Christian played that was everywhere. So in singles, Christian Alshon had a very close, very tightly contested match against Huang Nam Lee. I'm very sorry if I mispronounced his name. And obviously everyone saw it was kind of like the call heard around the world, match point down, and Christian hits a return that was called out. I saw a lot of like funny spoofs on this. I had heard from other people that this guy was known to make bad calls, and looking at the initial footage, I definitely thought the ball was in, and I was not inclined to, and I am not inclined to give him the benefit of the doubt. I do think the ball was in and that he knew it was in. Even I've seen the other angles and everything too. But people outright calling this like the hook of the century, like the biggest hook ever, I think that's a very incorrect statement and a massive example of hyperbole, honestly. This is far from the worst call ever. I've made worse calls than this. I have played against people and they've made worse calls than this against me. It was a slow hit ball, so that does factor into it, but we have seen far worse calls, like, let's be honest, So I don't like saying that, and I also do think there is this like us versus them kind of dynamic at play here, where it's easy to pile on hate and judgment onto someone who wronged like one of us. And it's like, we don't know him. He has a name that's difficult to pronounce for English speakers. And I feel like all of that kind of factored into this. And I feel like a lot of the language surrounding this event was very incendiary in a way that I didn't like. And I just think that some of the media and news sources who cover these types of things, like, at least pose things in a way that doesn't compel people to just pile on hate. Like, at least let people form their own opinions. Don't have like your cover photo be like the worst call of all time. It wasn't the worst call of all time. There is definitely a match point effect, but Christian was up big in game one and he lost game one. There were a lot of points he lost to be down 12-11 or 11-10, whatever it was. So I just kind of wanted to call that out. Generally, I think the refs did a really good job this week. I do think sometimes I got a little bit impatient with them, which was my fault. I'm also just, high strung in matches, but it's just really cute. And I think that I and other players have to remember that English is not these referees' first language, and they're doing their best, and they just don't have a lot of reps like the refs that we are used to in the US. Like, it was kind of cute. Like, they would sometimes take a lot longer than I was used to say point or second serve. So if there was like a close call that I said out and it was like a point, it felt like it would be so long till they say point, and I'd be like out, just trying to make sure that they knew. And there are a lot of other like little mistakes that I just don't think that we're used to happening as much in the US, but I think that they're all super passionate. All the refs were so nice. They did a great job. Obviously, there were some foot fault things, like they need better challenges. You need to be able to challenge foot faults. You need, like, Federico had a, faux foot fault called on him. We need challenges on grandstand. Generally, that's a problem in pro pickleball. We need more challenges just to make sure we're getting calls right. But I thought that, everyone did great, all things considered. I think it was really, really awesome. And I don't want the negative things to like overshadow the many, many positives, I guess. I also saw some people, maybe not loving the commentators, but you can just mute it if you don't like the commentating. Like, I don't really like people complaining so much about commentators. Like, I usually watch things on mute, honestly, more often than not, just because I like to form my own thoughts. I don't really like to be influenced too much by what commentators are saying when I'm watching, especially if I'm watching to evaluate play or, see who I play next. But you can just turn it off. So that's my thoughts there. But the last thing I want to talk about that has me so excited after this event is just the potential of international pickleball. I think there's a lot of things that have to get right. The PPA Tour is going to keep growing and investing in Asia and in all of these other regions, which is so incredible. The players are improving so fast. But international pickleball is so exciting because this was the first tournament. I didn't really feel this in Malaysia, when there was like an us versus them dynamic, but not in a negative way like I referenced before, where people are kind of like, judging someone maybe a little harsher than I think they would if the same situation happened in America. So Federico was playing in his semifinal match Hien Trong, who ended up getting silver. I thought his backhand was one of the cleanest I've ever seen, but it was like the whole stand, thousands of people were going crazy for him, and I was one of the few people there cheering for Federico, and it just felt so fun and just such an electric environment to be a part of. It was my first time really seeing like that national pride. All of these Vietnamese people are cheering for their countrymen against an outsider, and Federico's not maybe from the US, but I think of him as kind of a US player and he's my friend and I'm like pulling for him. Federico actually texted me after the match, thank you for supporting. And I was like, of course. Obviously he didn't end up winning it and it was a tightly contested match and there was the faux foot fault and some other challenges back and forth. But that was so exciting and got me really excited for, you know, when we can have proper like international competitions, you know, when you can do country versus country type of things. So, or continent versus continent, you know, USA versus world, you know, whatever you want to do. Tennis has some really cool formats that I think can be drawn from as inspiration. It was just so fun. And I felt that also, you know, in other matches, I was cheering for players based in the States that I wouldn't normally like care about at all. Like I'm not good friends with them, but there was more of that like us versus them, you know, dynamic, a little bit more camaraderie than I've ever really experienced. So that was really fun to be a part of. I also really impressed by the Vietnamese players, especially in singles. I would love if those two men who were in the final could play more in the States. I know they have before, but if they were given the opportunity to actually adjust to the lifetime ball and the different style of play, because it is so different. You know, Federico joked after the tournament that he might be done with singles in Asia. And I just think there's an adjustment period. So I wonder if those guys came to America, were able to train for a month or two, how it would go for them. But super exciting. I'm so excited about the future of pickleball. I'm so excited to have a great time here in Malaysia. Thank you guys so much for watching my channel. Please subscribe if you're not, and let me know what else you guys want me to talk about. And I will see you guys in the next video. Dash 1. Bye.